Hey, welcome to the One Piece at a Time Distilling Institute with your host, the alchemist of Indiana's Black Forest, Alan Bishop. Hey, this channel is all about home distilling and legal distilling. If you've got questions, reach out to us in the comments below, social media, or via bishopshomegrown@gmail.com. And don't forget to check out thealchemistcabinet.com. Hey guys, back and answering your questions again here at the One Piece at a Time Distilling Institute. So, I have a stack of questions. They've actually been coming in pretty hot and heavy here lately, which is great because, again, with process videos, I've been a little bit behind because it's been cold and had a couple stalled fermentations, etc. And, sometimes you actually need a break too, so that's not necessarily a bad thing. That being said, you guys are sending some pretty damn good questions, truthfully. So, here's one. So, and this is a longer email, but I'm going to read it to you. I won't bother to show you screenshots and everything, because I think you'll get the point pretty easily, and hopefully this will help our friend out here. So, hey, mate, I'm in the Rot Gut Moonshine page. I'm a beginner. By beginner, I mean 2 whiskey runs with a pot still, and last night a sugar wash run with reflux still. So my whiskey runs went great. Absolutely no issues with fermentation or the distilling. But last night, my reflux run has left me with some questions. So my recipe was 50 pounds of sugar, 20 gallons of water, reverse osmosis filtered, daddy yeast, nutrients, DAP, 3 handfuls of oyster shells. I miscalculated because I am crazy busy with live kids, etc. So doubled up on my yeast nutrients and DAP. I kept water heater in the mash, and it fermented down to the 1 mark above 1, which means I was happy with the recipe given. Screenshots of details. I believe I got everything correct. The only mistake I made, I didn't get a specific gravity reading until about 2 hours after adding the yeast, and it was already popping off like absolute madness, but it read 1.090. So to my run of 20 gallon sugar wash, I had 10 quarts or roughly 2.5 gallons of heads and tails from my previous whiskey runs. Each quart jar came in at 45% to 47% ABV. So last night my reflux still was running great. I basically followed this video's instructions. He gives a link to the video. So that is the sort of introduction to my position. And the question I have, my sight glasses weren't bubbling up anything like in the video, and it felt like my deflator couldn't keep up with the heat to keep the reflux going. I have a 5 cubic foot freezer that I turned to about 3/4 of it into a block of ice. I then use gallon jugs frozen to keep the water cool. How do I get more action in the bubble plates, please? Second question, the fermentation had 17.6 alcohol content, so 17.6% with my 2.5 gallons of heads and tails. Does my 5 gallon total, no cuts taken, seem like a good efficiency to you? I think the first 11 quarts were all 92 or 93% ABV, and then my deflator got too hot and the ABV bounced up and down a bit as I struggled to get the water cold and overcome the pipework feeding the deflator straight. It bent down and restricted slash stopped the flow of water. I stopped the run at 9%, and I think that's what we have there. So I'm going to address a few different things here because I think there's a couple of issues. So yes, I guarantee that your deflator was having a hard time keeping up with that. So that is a huge amount of alcohol and volatility coming off all at one time, right? So it's going to be hard for a deflator to keep up with that because the amount that is being pushed off vapor-wise at any one time in that still. The first thing that I would say is I wouldn't try to go those 1090 specific gravities. Those are pretty damn high of their own accord, right? And then if you have a 1090 that all but finished out on top of it, and you added heads and tails to it, you can imagine what happened to the ABV there, right? The amount of alcohol that's flashing off that deflator trying to keep up. I don't know the size of the deflator, but certainly I know your water restrictions, etc. with that deflator and with home distilling equipment. My suggestion would be, don't, on a sugar shine even, really for me, anything, we've talked about this on the channel before, 1070, 1075, unless you're running rum or something with a lot of unfermentable sugars, I don't ever try to push north of that. 1070, 1075 is plenty of alcohol there to get a good yield off your still and not overwhelm your equipment or choke up your equipment, right? One thing that you probably could have done that would have helped you out is instead of trying to run from that freezer and cool everything down, which I do that as well. There's nothing wrong with doing that if it can keep up with the amount of alcohol, right, and keep the water good and cool. If you don't have enough cooling capability other than using that freezer, the ice that's in it, and freezing water jugs, if you can just hook up to a municipal water supply, and yes, or a spring or a well, whatever you've got, and I know that costs some money if you're using municipal water, etc. That would probably help keep your deflator from getting too hot. You can always turn it up a little bit, right? Presuming that your water temperature is fairly decent coming out of the tap, you know, you can always turn it up a little bit and move more of that hot water off and more cool water in, right? But you need to have that cooling in order to load those plates. The fact that you're running out of cooling is why you couldn't load the plates. There wasn't enough reflux happening to actually fill those plates all the way up and let them hold homeostasis, so that way you could actually bubble vapor alcohol through liquid alcohol. So that's the two suggestions that I really have right there. Keep your ABV, your potential ABV, a little lower. 1075 is plenty. If you're doing a sugar wash, honestly, this is just my opinion, but starting off at 1050, 1055, you know, 1 pound of sugar per gallon is plenty for what you want to do. I know you always want to try to squeeze out what you can out of it. I understand that. You're trying to be efficient, make efficient use of your time and your effort. But you know, if you have to have more, then just run a couple, you know, extra washes, whatever you need to do, right? As far as your yield at 5 gallons off of 20 gallons, yeah, I'd say you did pretty decent there for sure. Absolutely. But try that next time. Try 1050 to 1075. You know, if you had 17+% alcohol to begin with and you hit it with those extra heads and tails from those previous 2 distillations, your alcohol content was up there pretty damn high. And don't feel bad. This is something professional distillers deal with. I have a problem at my distillery in that, you know, my fermenters are glycol chilled, and then my cooling water is actually in a cold liquor tank. I got about 2,000 gallons of cooling water, and that cold liquor tank is glycol chilled. But that cooling water has to feed all of my condensers and all of my deflamators at work, and it also has to feed to my mash tun at work. If it gets warm outside, even without running the deflamators, you got to be real careful how fast you're running, what percentage of alcohol that you're running, because you will run out of cooling water. Now, usually on the doubling run, I can get through that without a problem. Sometimes on my stripping run, it'll get a little bit warm in the summertime, warmer than I would like it to. And sometimes it hangs up the cooker completely because there's no cooling water to bring the temperature down any further. So this is definitely not a home distilling problem only. This is things that happens in commercial distilleries as well. So those are my pieces of advice, though, and I suspect that if you come down to a 1050, 1075, even if you were to add some heads and tails to it, as long as it's not a lot, right, that freezer should knock everything down. I mean, just give you an example, the freezer that I have is like a 3.5 cubic foot freezer, something of that nature. It's not very big at all. And like on a stripping run, I can knock down, you know, a 15 gallon to 17 gallon stripping run at 7 or 8% alcohol without any problem. About melted the ice at that point, so one run like that is good. On a doubling run, you know, if I've got some low wines in there at 60 or 70 proof, something like that, you know, I've knocked off as much as 10 gallons before. Now, running a deflamator and the condenser, you know, I typically try to leave that, you know, no bigger than a 3 to a 5 gallon doubling run, typically, to get through that stuff. I could probably push an 8, but you'd be pushing it and your water would be getting hot towards the end of it. But I hope that helps you out. I know it wasn't the most scientific explanation ever, but it's, you know, sometimes you don't have to have the most scientific explanation just to get through the basics. But as always, guys, reach out to me, bishopshomegrown@gmail.com, as well as thealchemistcabinet.com, or social media and or the YouTube comments below. I love y'all. Have a great one.